The Rosary is a powerful tool that we can use in our spiritual practice. But we probably shouldn't call it the Rosary. We should probably call it the Rosaries, because there's a lot of them. It's a part of my practice since I was a little kid and something that I still love doing to this day. So we're going to talk about praying the Rosaries today as we walk together down creation. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie. I'm a Christopagan druid and priest of Brigid.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan druid and sous chef to the Dogda.
Today, we're going to be talking about the Dominican Rosary, the Franciscan Rosary, and the Anglican Rosary specifically, though I'll probably throw in a couple others just for spice because I'm me. These are wonderful ways that we can incorporate either traditional prayers into our lives or create a really interesting prayer practice and devotional practice, as well as a magical working practice. But before we get into all that, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on whatever app you're listening to us on. We are working really, really hard on a quasi-secret project that I can't wait to tell you all about that we'll be announcing very soon. So you don't want to miss anything. All right, let's just get into it, shall we? I almost started this episode with the legendary origin of the Dominican Rosary, because it is such a, I don't know if I want to say good story, powerful story, or both. It is a story that was taught to me as 100% fact when I first was drawn to the Rosary. Saint Dominic was running around in Europe trying to get people back on what he considered the straight and narrow, and was not having a lot of luck, because if you know anything about the medieval church, yeah, it makes sense why people were kind of like, nah, I'm good. One day, there was a great storm that came up while he was in the village preaching. He ran outside of the church and heard all of the winds blowing, thunder cracking. He thought to himself, God is so angry with this place, he's just going to destroy it and raze it to the ground. Our Lady appeared to him and gave him the Rosary and said, have them pray this and they will be converted and they will go back onto the right path. And he goes back to the church and gets them to start praying the Rosary. The angels start ringing the bells while they're praying. Of course, everyone that was there for this recanted their wicked ways and got back onto the path.
If only Lot had a rosary.
Basically, Lot's biggest problem was he didn't have a rosary. Same with Elijah and everybody else. If they only had a rosary, everything would be fine.
That and maybe a cell phone, because if Abraham could have texted him, he could have been like, oh, okay, so that's the deal. I got to make sure not to leave town.
The Rosary has been around in one form or another for a really long time. It is essentially a string of beads that often have spacers in between them. That's one of the biggest differences between a rosary and a mala, is the malas generally are just a loop of beads, whereas a rosary has specific spacers between certain important beads to help remind you, oh, I do something different here. As I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, there are numerous kinds of rosaries. There is a 4-quartered 7-prayer Anglican rosary that has 7 small beads divided by 1. I love that they call it a cruciform bead. Then you have the Dominican rosary, which is 5 sets of 10 that are divided by separate beads. They also typically have a crucifix followed by a large bead, 3 small beads and 1 large bead before you even get into all that. And then we get into where it gets very, very complex with the Brigid Rosary, the Franciscan Rosary, and the Rosary of Our Lady of Seven Sorrows, which are similar in a lot of ways. They have 7 sets of beads, ranging from either 7 or 10, depending on the rosary, divided up again with a large bead in between. And they're all dedicated to specific sets of prayers. Most people are familiar with the Dominican Rosary and think that it is the only one, which is, of course, just saying an Our Father, 10 Hail Marys, and then a Glory be to the Father, unless you follow the ways that were put forward at Fatima, where you also add an Oh My Jesus. And if you don't know any of those prayers, you can find them all online. I got to be careful. If I start reciting a rosary, I will not stop until it's done. And I think we want to do a bit of discussion rather than just a rosary on this podcast. But yeah, there are many ways to do it. There are many variations of this. I think the most common variation that people have probably heard of is Saint Faustina was given the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, which is said on a Dominican rosary. That is a devotional to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. And that's where we find a lot of the variation that happens here. Is a lot of them are set to the Dominican rosary, and the prayers that are said on the beads change.
Sometimes what you're meditating upon will, for each.
I think that it is not just a perfectly valid thing to create your own rosary, but is a very instructive and powerful thing to do to put together your own sets of prayers to use on the beads that you like. And that's why I typically have next to me a 4-section Anglican rosary, a 5-section Dominican rosary, and a 7-section Franciscan rosary. Depending on what I'm wanting to do, there's a time scale difference there between am I doing 4 sets of 7, 5 sets of 10, or 7 sets of 10. It also depends on what we want to be meditating. But I will give you one piece of advice. I see a lot of modern rosaries overcomplicating this. Pick one set of prayers that gets repeated. One of the great benefits of saying the rosary is once you have the prayers memorized, it is a way of distracting your body.
Yeah.
Your body will read the beads, and you will be able to free your mind and your soul to contemplate whatever mysteries you're meditating on during that section of the rosary. I've seen a lot of modern rosary prayers where each decade have a completely different prayers in them. That is fine if the focus is on the recitation, but the way the rosary works best is for it to basically be something that the body can do so that the mind can be free to do the contemplation.
Yeah, it's kind of like a nice little twofer. Not only are you saying the prayers and getting the benefits of the prayers, but you're able to steep yourself in the mystery for each decade. You can really steep yourself in that mystery while you're engaging in that deep contemplation. You're also getting the added benefit of the prayers, which is where some of the amplification of the magical operations with using the rosary come into play. And I guess I'm going to take a minute and pull us a little aside to do a little pitch here for the rosary. So the rosary is great for everyone, but I found it especially great for neurodivergent individuals. The rosary is amazing tool, spiritual technology for that, because you not only are doing the prayers, but you have a physical thing. It's a fidget stemming tool. Later on in life, when I became aware of that aspect, it was like, oh yeah, it is that as well. And because you have these beads that you're working through your hands as you're going. And so there's this added physical movement, and it helps with the focusing. It helps with being able to really immerse yourself in. And so, yeah, if you're neurodivergent, it's great for all neuro makeups, but neurodivergence especially, kind of like for those that like to do the walking meditations, where it can have that added benefit for neurodivergence because of the physicality involved. This is another one that has physicality that you can do sitting.
And I like that you are focusing on the spiritual technology of it, because I think that's what gets lost in a lot of the uses of the rosary. Because yes, you can say a rosary for a specific thing simply by dedicating at the beginning, I'm saying this rosary for fill in the blank. But as we know from our magical practice, Easy Magical Practice Started, go see our series that we did where we worked through the Druid Craft book to help people get started on their magical journey. Magic requires a lot of intention, and that is often confused for will, though will does play a part in some ways, but it requires a lot of intention. And one of the things that a rosary is very good for is collecting and focusing that intention. So there are quite a few that will use the Gloria Patri, the glory be to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, never shall be, world without end, for each of the small beads, because you are trying to bring about victory. You're trying to bring about success. You're trying to bring about glory. And so by reciting a prayer that stirs those feelings within you, you are keeping yourself focused on that intent. You're keeping yourself focused in that place that you need to be to get the working done. And that's where rosaries can become powerful tools in our arsenal and a very powerful spiritual technology to help us to both focus ourselves and focus our energy towards the things that we want and are trying to get.
Yeah, because that's the thing I found. Like, for instance, anybody can sit down and deeply contemplate the mysteries in the life of Christ and go through this and steep themselves in thought about the different stations of the cross. That's going to be a harder task for some than for others. That's where something like the Rosary comes in and can be very helpful, because you have the physicality working the beads, and you also have the repetitive prayers so that you can, in a way, distract the mind enough and distract the body enough so that you can steep in, marinate in it.
That is a good way to think about it. In celebration of my dedication to the Blessed Mother Mary, just said we fly to your patronage prayer in a rosary with the Hail Marys on the larger beads as just a devotional, a celebration of this connection that we have. I would say the Angelus, where you would normally say the Creed, because I wanted this to be specifically a devotion to Mary. I have been working on, and the reason I haven't published it yet is because I keep going through drafts of it, and never be afraid to go through drafts. This is why we always tell you to journal your experiences. You only learn that through the doing. But I've been working on a rosary dedicated to Brigid, because that is a devotional that I want to have in my own life. It's been a very powerful experience to compose these prayers, order them just right, and figure out what things to meditate on. Which has gotten me to the point where I'm actually developing 2 separate rosaries, one on the Anglican rosary that is a meditation that incorporates all 4 for sacred animals on it. And that's one that I find in times of injustice, it's getting to the point where I think I'm getting closer to being able to share that one, because we are calling on these spirits to aid in that and reminding us of the stories and reminding us of the powers that are there and arraigned in the light to our benefit. And that is a very, not just liberating, but powerful way to connect to the stories that move us, is finding a way, even if you're just doing a paraphrase, right? So how would you write your version of the Hail Mary for this person, or your version of the Our Father for this person, or your version of the Gloria Patri? Maybe you're saying the Kabbalistic cross or something of that nature in there. But finding the prayers, finding the words is a real questing experience, because I've never said a rosary that I didn't get some benefit from it, whether that's in that time of mindfulness spent with it or in the intention that was generated through it. So I've never had one where it was so catastrophically wrong that I had to stop early. I had some that were overly wordy. I thought that the prayers,
The author?
well, it's hard to know when you're doing the small bead prayers, because the Hail Mary is actually quite a long prayer. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the fruit of your womb, Jesus. And if you're Catholic and still use their longer version of it, the pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death at the end.
You got to think,
But
if it's a full 30 version, you're looking at easily 5 minutes per decade just of the Hail Mary.
Yeah. It's a lot of words. And so when you're judging a prayer that you're writing up against it, it may not look like it's too long, but in trying to remember it and recite it, it may actually be too long. The Hail Mary has been honed over at least 800 years of recitation so that the words flow with a rhythm to them that work for recitation. We're just getting started on making new ones. If you don't have that rhythm, if you don't have that down, don't worry, you can work on it. You can continue to tweak it. And next time you say it, you try a slightly different version of it. It's getting over that initial fear, because we have these stories like the one I just told you about St. Dominic, that these rosaries were literally handed down to us. The truth is, he probably just wrote the prayers, because the rosary itself, the actual device that the prayers are on, preceded him. by at least 150 years. A string of knots or beads in the same order as the Dominican Rosary was already in existence by the time Dominic started preaching it. But the story is powerful, and that's why it gets retold. Your rosary doesn't have to come down from on high. It can come to you from an inspiration. It can come to you from an idea, or just be a thought. I wonder what it would be like to compose a rosary for X, Y, or Z.
I've even sat back and went, I had a very difficult question, difficult thing to ponder. And I've sat back and broke it out into 5 parts so that I could really steep myself in the question for each of the decades. It was dedicated to one of the 5 parts. And to that, I even left very little words to it. The Hail Marys were all there, but the dedication of that decade was to that question or that aspect of the thing that I was wanting to contemplate. I found that a very powerful experience. It was very little words, almost just subject, the aspect of that, which some of the decades turned out to be just a question related to it. That was it. Just subject and a vibe as the dedication for that decade, and then went forward with it. It was a very interesting experience. I've even had a couple times where I didn't have a rosary handy and I just did it on my fingers. Counted out 10 fingers. I just kind of tapped my fingers together and did the rosary without the rosary. I found it far more helpful to have the rosary there because, neurodivergent, and having the thing, being able to feel the beads and stuff was a much more pleasant experience and more enriching experience for me. But even that doesn't have to be.
If you do not have a rosary and are looking at getting started with this, especially if you're wanting to start writing your own rosary prayers, I highly recommend, this is my Anglican rosary. See how tiny it is? It's very small. You have the cross and 2 beads at the top, and then these groups of 7 divided by 1, and then 7 again, and then 1 4 times around. It's a very good way to start this kind of a practice because it is smaller, so it takes less time to do. Also, if you practice CreationSpirituality like we do, when you're getting started, it's very easy to figure out what to associate with each week. That's what these are called, the weeks here, because there's 7 of them. What do you associate with each week? Well, just start with, what is the via positiva of this, the via negativa of this, the via creativa of this, and the via transformativa of this. And you have a series of prayers that write themselves, especially when you don't have access to specific mysteries that you're doing, like you're not looking at particular aspects of a person's life or something. Because of its size, because of how short it is to say, it's a much easier rosary to write for and to start your tests on, because you're not saying 10 each time, you're saying 7 each time, and there's only 4 sets rather than the 5 that you would find on a traditional Dominican rosary. By the way, if you go somewhere and just say, I'm looking for a rosary, they will point you at the Dominican rosary. Even at a lot of gift shops that primarily specialize in Anglican and Episcopalian stuff. I got this rosary at the National Cathedral, one of the last times I visited there, because it's one of my favorite places in Washington, D.C. Also, highest place in Washington, D.C., because it's up on a hill. You can see everything all around when you can actually get up into the bell tower. It's a great place to get started because it has a simpler structure and is a shorter commitment for your time, especially until you figure out if this practice and the technology is going to work for you. As I like to remind people, especially with a recitation practice, but with any practice, don't just give up after the first go. If it's truly hateful to your soul, maybe give up after the first go. But it's going to be slow going for a lot of us. If you're not used to reciting the prayers that are used there, you're going to have them written out in front of you until you get them into your memory. For people who think that they can't memorize something, when you say a traditional rosary, you're saying the Hail Mary 50 times in one rosary.
You'll learn
technically 53 times in one rosary. It gets into your memory a lot faster than you think it would. Make sure that you are keeping yourself calm, keeping yourself in that peaceful place, and giving yourself that grace to not have all the words right initially. You'll get there. Just stay with it and see what it brings to your life. Like with any spiritual technology that we talk about, journal, write down your experiences with it. How did you feel while you were doing it? How did you feel leading up to doing it? What happened afterwards? Did you notice whatever it was that you were praying for actually manifesting in your life? Keep notes and keep track of things, because it'll help you understand your relationship to this particular type of spiritual technology. These three that I've mentioned today are not the only kinds of rosary. You can find variations in Islam where they have a set of prayer beads where they recite the 99 names of God on them. I'm kind of wanting to make a rosary like that because Matthew Fox has a wonderful book on his 88 names for God. I'm interested in trying to set up a practice of reciting them. And so I'm looking at making a set of beads like that for me. And of course, there are malas of various scales in both Hinduism and Buddhism. That's not even to mention the chokti that you find in the Orthodox and particularly the Russian Orthodox Church, which is actually made with knots and used for reciting the Jesus prayer. So there are a lot of variations of this theme throughout the world that you can look into and investigate and really dig in. I like saying the chokti, though I rarely actually pull out my rope and will use one of the beaded rosaries instead when I say it. But it all depends on you and what of these spiritual technologies work best for you. I hope that you have enjoyed this. I hope that you have learned something from this, or at the very least got inspired to go out and write your own rosary, because I think we should all be writing our own rosaries. Yes, it's good to say the traditional ones. It's good to use the ones that others have written for us. And if that's all you want to do, that's great. But there's something really empowering about being able to put together a rosary specifically for something that means a lot to you. I would love to know your thoughts about all of this and let us know down in the comments. Have you ever said the rosary? What's your favorite rosary to say? Do you use any other beads or repeated prayer like this? We're not talking about mantras yet. Mantras are actually something a little bit different because mantras rarely actually are accompanied by beads, so sometimes they are. But most mantras are actually recited separately. So we're not talking about mantras here. We're talking about rosaries and prayer beads, but I'd love to know about them down in the comments. If you're listening to us on YouTube, Spotify, or CreationsPaths.com, you can leave a comment right there. If you're listening to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they don't notify us, so we won't know. But you can leave a comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. And then head over to CreationsPaths.com, click on chat, and you can leave a message there, and we will see it, and we will be able to get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars, you can pass our way. We offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both, and you can support us using the Cash App hashtag CreationsPaths. Thank you to everybody who does that. We are ever so grateful. Thank you so much. You all really do help us keep the lights on, keep a roof over our head, and food on our table. If we've ever said anything that's helped you out, please share it with others. That helps us out more than you know. As we go out, as we like to end on a prayer, O Blessed Mother, who is forever with us and looking out for us, her children, for whom it has never been known that anyone who has flown to your patronage has ever been sent away unaided. Help us as we navigate these dark and troubling times, and teach us to pray the words that will give us strength to get through. Help us always. Amen.
Amen. Have you ever done the rosary of the mother sauces?
Have you ever done the rosary of the mother sauces?
Oh, God.